Well, hello. Welcome to another edition of Crop Life Retail Week. I'm Eric Sfiligoj, back again with my partner in crime, Lara Sowinski. Laura, welcome back to the program. God, did I miss you.
Well, well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's crazy. You take a week off for vacation and you feel like you need to learn to read again. You're not not caught up on everything. But yeah, it's nice to
Yes.
be back. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. And I know last week, of course, I talked all about our adventures at the Maggie Show in Bloomington, Illinois. And of course, there was lots of other news going on in the marketplace. But since I didn't have a partner last week, I didn't talk about it. But we can. You're here now, so we can talk. And of course, topic that comes foremost to mind, of course, is transportation, logistics, supply chain. I know there was quite a bit of back and forth over the last couple of months regarding the Canadian railways and their
Mhm.
workers and the potential for a strike. And I guess the strike was supposed to happen back on August 20th, I believe. And kind of, I guess what kind of happened, there was a lot of back and forth online from associations saying this is terrible. Please don't strike. Please tell your legal legislative folks to keep the strike from happening. But I guess the Canadian government took a similar approach to the U.S. government when the railroads and unions were having issues. And they stepped in and basically put everything in arbitration and said, do not strike. We'll get everything taken care of. And so lo and behold, I guess the railroad workers are now back to work. And, they're going to be in arbitration, but it sounds like we've kind of dodged a bullet on this one. So what do you have on this situation to add?
Indeed, that's it in a nutshell. The interesting part, as you mentioned, of course, the Canadian Industrial Relations Board stepped in along with the minister and ordered the Teamsters and um, union workers back on the job, if you will. So the Canadian rail strike was averted. However, and I should add too, and this is the Reuters report that indicated that leading agricultural businesses pleaded to the government for help. So certainly, if the strike had occurred, obviously ag businesses and others would be affected pretty severely, I should mention. Um, it's in addition to, this news on the Canadian rail strike that we've been talking about recently, we have been talking about likewise the potential for a strike, the longshoremen on the east and Gulf coasts of the U.S. Their contract expires at the end of September. Um, but what's interesting, the takeaway for me about the Canadian rail strike is that not only, as you mentioned, did the government step in, but what does that portend for Canadian airline pilots, for instance, right now are reviewing their contracts.
Hmm.
So that may lead to, the question is, will the government step in again? The Teamsters, while they return to work, they are planning to appeal the decision by the Canadian government, appeal that in federal court. So, yeah, so it was resolved in terms of, getting everyone back to work and avoiding a strike. But I think, how we proceed from there will be the big question. So, I did want to give an update on the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA. So their contract, as mentioned, expires on September 30th, and this is longshoremen on the U.S. East and Gulf Coast. They have a wage scale meeting that is to occur on September 4th and 5th. So perhaps there will be some good news following that meeting. The impact, should the ILA and waterfront employees not be able to reach an agreement, would be pretty uh, significant, just in terms of cargo containers. Forget break bulk, and project cargo, for instance, but they would estimate um, 20,000 containers each day, combined East Coast and Gulf Coast, would be in, they would just be sitting idle, nothing loaded for import, for export,
Mhm.
offloading, etc. So you can imagine how quickly each day that would build up, even if it was a short term, if you will, strike. I mean, the backlog would be pretty significant. So I think everyone's kind of holding their breath. And the same thing is, not new. The big issue, the primary issue is concerns by the ILA over automated technology. The more we
Mhm.
automate, the gates and processing of trucks, paperwork, etc.,
Right.
fewer jobs. So I think that's pretty big. Thus far, I know we've mentioned this in the past. Well, things seemingly started off on a let's all commit to find an agreement. This was months ago. Um, it's now pretty contentious. So we'll see if anything happens again on these meetings from September 4th and 5th. But that is something that shippers have already been trying to get stuff in early. Over the summer, there was a unusually high spike of freight coming in. Likewise, looking at West Coast ports as an alternative should there be a strike on East Coast and Gulf Coast, but we'll see.
Yeah, and a question for you, since you know this transportation supply chain business a little better than I do, you've covered it longer. Now we've seen when it came to the railroads and their workers, we saw the U.S. and then the Canadian governments both step in for the good of the economic state of the country,
Mhm.
basically saying you can't strike. Do you think the U.S. would step in with the longshoremen as well, or is that not that it would that not be the case? Are we trying to compare apples and oranges here? What do you think?
It's interesting. I think that because there is an alternative, if you will, freight can be diverted. In this case, for instance, to West Coast ports, to maybe other ports, Canada, then railed down or whatever.
Hmm.
I think that has been less of a, um, let's pull this lever if it happens. However, you can't say no. I mean, the government, I think, will, as they have in, you know, years ago, they have stepped in, whether it was their air traffic control or whatever. If things are that serious, I think the government will step in. With the case of longshoremen, again, because there is the ILA, East Coast, Gulf Coast, ILWU, West Coast, that always has been to me that, well, we have an alternative. So
Okay.
we'll
Okay.
see. It would have to get pretty hairy, which it could. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, yes, like you said, the meetings are taking place here September 4th, 5th. So maybe in next week's video, we'll have an update to provide.
Yep.
So,
Yep. We'll keep our eye on it.
all right. Well, hey, one other thing I wanted to talk about, of course, since we live in the information age and sharing stuff online and with everyone all the time, 24/7, because of the internet and World Wide Web, has become very, very commonplace. Of course, when you have an open system like that, it invites some troublemakers or people who will try to take advantage of that system and hurt you, unfortunately. And this was a report I ran across from our friends at stockalytics.com. They were talking about the number of customers in the supply chain that had been affected by cyber attacks here in 2024. And I guess this would be called no fun with numbers because according to them, 183,000 customers have had their supply chains disrupted or attacked this year, which is an increase of 33% versus 2023. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And of course, what they said is that most of these attacks occur by social engineering, as they call it, which target the open source and proprietary codes of these companies and then attack them accordingly because they're easier to get to because they're open. So yeah, I know we've done plenty on cyber attacks that have happened in agriculture, but apparently it's a pretty widespread problem and getting worse here this year, unfortunately.
It is, yeah. Unless you're a little more inside of the industry, whatever that industry is, ag, supply chain, whatever, a lot of these things you don't hear about, even though I would say they are pretty significant. I think, just in conversations with our Women in Ag Tech ambassador, Joyce Hunter, who does a lot of work with cybersecurity as a critical infrastructure um, of concern for the U.S. government. I really think that this next administration, and I think this is an important thing that maybe isn't talked about as much in the public forum, if you will, but I think the issue of cybersecurity is one that really, 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 as AI gets, we're talking about AI, yay, great. How many applications and ways is that, impacting our businesses and our lives? But the cybersecurity part of it has to be, we saw what happened just when the glitch, to update the software,
Oh, right.
when Microsoft had those problems. I mean, it's pretty big. So yeah, and I think as you mentioned, a lot more probably goes on than we hear about. But I
Yep.
think that's one of the biggest things for sure that we'll be dealing with here.
Yeah, and you pointed out AI. Of course, AI has the potential to offer more security or a level of security, I would imagine, based on how sophisticated AI systems tend to be. However, if you're a troublemaker or a hacker using an AI system to attack, then you're up in the game too. So yeah, you're right. This is a new age we live in, the cyber age, and we're going to have to keep an eye on this. And of course, as we get more numbers and stories on this, we'll report on it moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. The ongoing cat and mouse game.
Yes, exactly. Build the better mousetrap. All right, Miss Laura. Well, hey, time for your favorite segment of the show. Last week I had to do this solo, which wasn't near as much fun. So it is time for Fun with Numbers.
All right. Yay. Can't believe I
All right.
this week.
Well, we'll see if you can make up for it, because again, I got a tricky, interesting number for you this week.
Okay.
So your number is 30,000, 30,000 barrels per day. Okay.
Okay.
So, Miss Laura, is 30,000 barrels per day, does that represent A, the amount of diesel fuel used by growers during the 2024 planting season? Is it B, the amount of fuel transported by Canadian railroads this past year? Is it C, the amount of renewable diesel fuel imported by the U.S. during the first half of 2024? Or is it D, the amount of margaritas consumed by the CropLife team at the recent Maggie show? And we were drinking a lot of margaritas, but I don't think we topped 30,000 barrels a day. So.
But you came doggone close.
Maybe one of us did. We'll remain nameless.
Tell me what C was again. I'm sorry.
The amount of renewable diesel fuel imported by the U.S. during the first half of 2024.
Boy, oh boy, this is a hard one.
Yes. See, I gave you a week off. I figure I had to be tough on you this week.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna full on guess. I'm gonna go with C.
You are full on correct. Nice
Really?
job, ma'am. Yes, this
Wow.
was a report. It was talking about the Energy Information Administration was talking about the fact that, again, we've been talking renewable diesel is a thing that has become very, very popular. And at the moment, the U.S. is apparently not producing enough of its own for the consumption needs. So, yes, about 30,000 barrels per day were imported through the first 5 months of this year, actually. And that is a 29% increase from what was imported during 2023. So
Wow.
again, we've talked renewable diesel is something everybody's looking at, and apparently we're already kind of seeing that not making enough in America at the moment, so we need to get it from outside sources.
There's an opportunity there for sure. That's great.
Absolutely. So congratulations on getting it right. So
Yay. See what a vacation does?
yes, it focuses the mind. All right, Miss Lara. Well, it was great having you back in seat virtually with me from Texas while I'm in Ohio. And on behalf of everyone at the Crop Life Media Group, thanks for joining us for this week's edition of Crop Life Retail Week. We'll see you again soon.
If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comments section below. Your feedback is important to us. We will try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.